all this wonderful energy at the beginning. I don't sing or dance. I talk, okay? So I'll try to be as entertaining as I can, but basically I just talk. I want to give you a really quick perspective of where I'm coming from, so you have an idea maybe a little bit about who the person is that's standing here, and then what I want to do with the time that I have. And I know you guys all need to get up and eat and move around. I understand that. Okay, so I will talk as fast as I can. I don't want to tell you all about how to set up a peer mediation program in a school. If you're interested in having that discussion, I'll be around the rest of the afternoon. I'm happy to have that discussion with you. What I'd like to share with you, given what we've been talking about this morning and thinking about it a whole lot the last month or so, what are you going to do for 10 minutes, Chang? I'd like to share with you what I've learned from working with the kids. Because as a parent, as a grandparent, as a teacher, I've learned a whole bunch. And I'd like to kind of share that with you, but I want to give you a quick perspective of where I came from. Out of college, I worked 10 years in a major healthcare organization, HR work. I did a ton of conflict resolution work. That was my job. Some of it was very formal, mediation, arbitration, lots of conversations, one-on-one, room full of people. So I came, when I came to being a parent, I had this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful opportunity to be a full-time mom for a while. I don't need to go there with why that all evolved, but I was able to be a full-time mom, which is just like, wow, this was like awesomeness. So a friend, a mutual friend, this is Hawaii. We're a small community. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So in the community of dispute resolvers, of conflict resolution people, somebody said to me, do you know that the schools are discussing now implementing peer mediation programs in the schools? Why don't you go talk to Carl Takeshita, Department of Education? I'm mentioning Carl because Carl was absolutely instrumental in the late 80s through the 90s of getting peer mediation in the schools. My introduction to Carl was I kind of walked into his office and said, hi. And he said, do you work with little kids? Because I can't stand it. Okay, sure. I've never stood in front of a room of 3rd, 4th, 5th graders before, but sure, I know all about conflict resolution work. The first class I taught, there was a room full of kids, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. I actually, literally, put 2 of them to sleep. Well, I had 30 chart pads, okay? And that was back in the day when you had chart pads, you didn't do the PowerPoint thing, it was chart pads. So I had them all up there, and I was like, 2 of them were sound asleep. Okay, I need to work on this. So I did. And for the last 20-something years, I've spent a lot of time standing in front of classrooms, listening and listening and listening and learning for kids. I regularly work with 1st graders through 12th graders. So I'm going to refer to all of them as kids. Hopefully there aren't too many middle school kids or high school kids here because they don't like to be referred to as kids. So, but when I say kids, I'm referring to the gamut of ages, okay? So let me shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the things I've learned from kids about conflict resolution work. We'll skip the whole part about how I learned to actually communicate and share some of this with the kids. That was a process, and I immediately dumped all the chart pads. Okay, what kids know an awful lot about conflict resolution. They have learned that when an adult stands there, and whether the adult is a teacher or a VP or a parent, and I think I mentioned this, but I'm definitely a parent, I'm also a grandparent, 2 twin middle school guys. Oh, there should be a whole book written about that. When the adult is standing or sitting with the kids, the first thing the kids know that they're supposed to do is they know they're supposed to talk it out. They get that, especially in school. They know that we adults don't like to have them punch each other out and use violence. They get that part. They also get the part that they don't really want to listen to understand what anybody else in the room is talking about, because that might be an admission of guilt. They also get that we love apologies. So all they have to say is, oh, sorry, miss. Never mind they have no clue about what they just apologized for. What they've learned is that gets them out of a lot of situations. There's absolutely nothing wrong with all the things that I just said. There's a time and a place for that. There's a time and a place for us adults where we need to actually be a judge, an arbitrator, a decision maker. There's times when we actually have to say to these kids, okay, you need to tell me what happened. You need to tell me what happened. Now this is what's going to happen now, okay? There's a time and a place for that. But there's also a time and a place, and I'm an absolute passionate believer in this, when the kids need to feel empowered, where they have an opportunity to try to figure out some of these conflict things themselves. And we can help them do that. And the littler the child, the more we may have to help them in the very beginning, but don't be fooled. The middle school kids and high school kids don't know a whole lot more about it any more than a third grader does, okay? They just pretend that they do. So they can look to us to guide them. So yes, adults, we need to be the adult, we need to be the judge, there's no question about that. But we can also be a facilitator. We can also be a facilitator. So go back through what I just said. When the kids go talk it out, okay, what kids have learned to do is when they talk it out, what the adults, what they say, how they talk it out, is they want to make it very clear that they had nothing to do with this problem. They didn't start it. I'm not to blame. You started it. Okay? I mean, right? Does that sort of ring true? Okay? So what you can help them with is you can help redirect them a little bit. Let them say their side of the story, absolutely fine. Then you repeat back to them what you've heard them say. Not to judge it. You leave out all the inflammatory name calling. Okay? Leave all that out. Just feed back to them what you've heard them say. The basic problem is that happened as far as they're concerned. Second person goes. Same thing. You feed back to them. What kids are uncomfortable doing, in my experience, is they're uncomfortable just saying facts and sharing what happened as they think it happened. They're very defensive that they're going to get blamed for things. So one of the ways we can help them when we're facilitating this conflict resolution discussion is we can help them shift from who are you going to blame and who are you going to punish to, okay, let's take responsibility for what happened. Let's take responsibility for figuring out how to fix it. Different perspective. We can help that process. We can help the kids. And one of the things I have learned repeatedly is kids are very eager to learn different ways to expand their repertoire of conflict resolution work. They very much want to, but they're very uncomfortable and wary. Listening. The whole listening part somehow has gotten jammed up. If I'm going to sit there as a kid and listen to what this other person is saying about what happened, then somehow it's implying that I'm agreeing with their assessment of the problem or their assessment of the conflict. Shift the focus. Shift the focus to, you're going to listen to what that other person has to say so you can understand it. You don't have to agree with it. You can think they're crazy. It's fine. But you're going to listen to what they have to say so that you can understand why they're upset. The more everybody in the room can understand about what happened, the more likely it is we're going to be able to figure out a fair way to solve the problem. So you can help the kids by feeding back to them, get used to feeding back to them the essence of the problem, leaving out all that name calling. You can get them to practice listening to understand each other. You should watch some of these faces when you go, okay, Yuri, would you please tell Sam what you just heard him say? What? Okay, Sam, why don't you say again what you just said? Yuri, please listen this time so that when Sam is all power, you can feed back to him what you heard him say. But the kids gravitate to this and pick it up. But it's a skill, and you can help them learn the skill, and it's a skill that could be practiced. It's not hard, and it's not exotic, and it's not real funky. It's a very basic communications kind of skill, and you can really help them, whether you're the adult teacher or the adult parent. What you have to be real careful of, if I may say as a side, and we'll talk about solutions in just a second here, and it's my nature to be too. We adults take it on ourselves to fix things and solve the things for the kids. So sometimes our discipline is that we have to sit there or stand there and be quiet and not pass judgment. Well, what were you thinking? You know what the rules are. Okay. Okay, so Yuri, you're saying, so Sam, as far as you're concerned, okay, but you have to be really careful that when the kids are there, they're not picking up vibes from you that you're passing judgment on what they're saying. If they sense for a minute you're passing judgment on what they're saying, it's going to shut them down. Understandably. It's no different for us adults, right? I mean, if we're sitting in front of somebody and we watch the body language, we hear their voices, it shuts us down too. So if the goal is to help the kids be more comfortable figuring out how to find some fair ways to solve problems, sometimes we have to be a little more disciplined too. And I'm not saying it's not hard, believe me. I have said. Okay, let's talk about finding fair solutions. Kids are very quick to tell you they get that they're supposed to suggest some kind of compromise. They get that they're supposed to talk about sharing. And they get that they're supposed to do this whole apology thing. They got that. Honestly, people, adults, my compadres, they've heard us. They get it, okay? So let's talk about nuancing that just a little bit. What the kids are not experienced or practiced doing, most kids, and I'm making generalizations here, so clearly there are always exceptions to this. What most kids are not practiced in is generating fair solutions, thinking of ways to fix a problem that maybe is outside the box. So one of the things that you can do is, okay guys, this is exactly what I think Yuri and Sam are saying is the real problem. So Yuri, what are 3 fair ways you can think to solve this problem? Sam, what are 3 fair ways you can think to solve this problem? Go back and forth, discuss, evaluate as generously as you can so that you don't shut the kids down from throwing out ideas. The more the kids are able to get used to and comfortable throwing out ideas, it's like, oh, you can just see the stress kind of leave because it's like, you know what, maybe I can manage this. Maybe it's going to be okay. And you can almost see the body language happening. One thing I would like to say, but I want to talk about apologies specifically, one thing about the type of solutions that they generate. We adults tend to want them to zoom to the perfect solutions. And when I first started out in this whole business way back in the day, there was all this raging debate about, do you refer to it as conflict resolution or do you refer to it as conflict management? You get the drift, right? The beginning was like, it's revolution because it's at the resolution because at the end there has to be this kumbaya moment. Okay, what I've learned is maybe you need to start really small. And if all the kids can agree to do is, okay, I'm just going to stay away from them. If that's all they can agree to do at the moment, that works for me, okay? It's a start. It gives them the sense that they have some control over what's going on in their lives. And the more they have this sense of control, the easier it is for them to come up with solutions that can be really generous. That's my observation. Now, about apologies. A sincere apology is awesome. I don't need to tell you that. You know that. One of the ways you can wrong word. Excuse me. One of the ways you can help your children think a little more carefully about that is, okay, I'm sorry already. Okay, Yuri, what are you sorry about? Specifically, what are you sorry about? Oops. I'm sorry I'm standing here in front of you and I'm in trouble. You know how the rhythm goes, right? Okay, so get them to start thinking and being very specific about the apology. then it's a little easier, because if they don't feel it in their heart, I have a real issue about don't use the words. If you don't feel it, don't say it. Be honest and be generous, because one of the things with kids is that they tend to really think in terms of short-term consequences rather than long-term consequences. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. So short-term, okay, I'm sorry. But long-term, that may not have done a whole lot to help their relationship. It may not have done a whole lot to think about preventing the problem from happening again. And when you talk about fair solutions, it's really cool to throw in, okay guys, so what are you going to do so this doesn't happen again? Because kids don't tend to think of prevention or long-term. And the more you can get them to think, now I'm using a lot of words here, a lot of words, and you talk about diversity. The younger the kid, depending on their own cultural experiences, their own home experiences, they may be a speaker of 10,000 words like me, but they also may be a kid who speaks 100 words. And that's absolutely awesome. I have seen mediations take place between third graders on a playground that lasted no more than 5 minutes. And it was like, whoa, that was so cool, okay? Didn't solve world problems, didn't impact the atmosphere in any way sensitive, okay? But for the kids that were there during that process, it was like, wow, that wasn't bad. And I can go play, and oh, I'm not in trouble, okay? It's a start. And one of the other things I want to share with you is that I've worked with an awful lot of kids over a lot of years, and most kids really want to do the right thing. They don't always know what the right thing is exactly because they get a huge amount of contradictory information. Huge. We were talking earlier about the impact of the internet on this generation of kids. Well, my own kids are in their 30s, so it's impacted them too, but my grandsons are 12. They have no idea what life would be like without an iPad, all right? Okay? But they're flooded with contradictory information about conflict resolution work, about conflict management work, about how relationships should work. They're flooded with things. So we can't, my big thing is, one of the ways we are helping our kids is to help them think in maybe small ways and big ways, but help them think critically about the information around them. No, don't just tell them what to do all the time. Work with them, show them, allow them to experiment and figure things out, some of these things out for themselves. Because most kids really want to do the right thing. Most kids just want to play. Think of the Cyndi Lauper song, Am I Too Old? Does that even connect with any of you out here? Girls just want to have fun? Yep. Kids just want to have fun. They really do. And they want to hang out, and they want to have friends, and some of them really like schoolwork, but but mostly they don't want to get caught up in all of this drama. Most kids don't. So the more we can help them keep it to a manageable level, and the earlier we can start that, the better we all are with that, okay? Now, what I would like to leave you with so that you guys can go eat is there's, on the resource table over there, well wait, let me back up the truck a little bit here. Two last things. One, there is a community of people here in Hawaii who are working very hard to try to keep peer mediation in the schools active, an active program. Now, what happens with peer mediation is that what you're training kids to do is you're training kids to serve the role of a facilitator, of being the one who helps the kids who are caught up in the conflict go through basically the same kind of process that I just kind of laid out for you. Talk about what happened, work on finding fair solutions to the problem. There are probably about 24 schools in the state who have active peer mediation programs, and it ranges from elementary, middle school to high school. There is a group of us who are in the community who are trying to keep everything all active, and Giuseppe mentioned the ACR Hawaii a little earlier. The Mediation Center of the Pacific is another very active organization. And the Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution out of the court is also another very active group. On the resource table, I think I'm the only one that's over there. There is, I brought some brochures from the Mediation Center of the Pacific and I brought a printout from the CADR from the court because they just featured the peer mediation programs in one of their latest newsletters. There's also a brochure from me, and you can skip the sales pitch. What you might be interested in is inside the brochure, I have listed 3 YouTube videos that you can access for free that can show you what a peer mediation session can look like when kids are conducting it. And one is of an elementary school. They're very reality-based, short, to the point. There's rarely a real kumbaya kind of moment. It's just getting right to it, okay? There's one of a high school, which is a little more involved because the high school, middle school, intermediate, high school conflicts that come before mediation most of the time involve relationship kinds of issues. Gossip, rumors, boyfriend, girlfriend. I couldn't actually believe standing in front of a group of 4th graders that we were discussing boyfriend-girlfriend issues. Wait, there's plenty of time. Wait for middle school. Don't rush it. But in any case, there's a really good video where you can kind of get a glance of what a high school mediation session can look like, and also the Maui Mediation Center put together a video, and I've listed it on here so that you can look on YouTube and get an idea. If you want any other information about peer mediation in the schools and stuff, you can contact me. My email address is in here. No obligation or anything if you just want to know kind of what's going on in the community. One quick commercial, and I'll have one more thing, and then I'll be still. I promise. Okay. February 13th, Friday, February 13th, 2015, we will be holding our 28th annual statewide peer mediation conference. And this is when those of us in the community and the schools who still have active middle school or high school programs, it does not include the little kids, the younger kids, I'm sorry, younger kids. Gotta be careful. And we do this every year. So this is the 28th year we're doing this, and it's a whole day. We get everybody in one room, which is really cool, really cool. The University of Hawaii Sparkmont Tanaka Peace Institute is hosting us again, so we'll be at the UH Campus Center. So we're very grateful to Ann Smoke for stepping up and supporting this group every year. Okay, one last thing and then I'll be still. I did not include this on the resource table. If you would like a copy of this, I brought a whole bunch because one of the directions was please bring a possible activity, so I'm not going to have you actually do this, but if you're the least bit interested. Kids don't get really hung up a whole lot in terms, in terminology and words that we adults tend to. They have a much easier time kind of moving on and not getting all caught up. So, as you are all very aware, there's tremendous emphasis now on the whole issue of bullying. Wrong. Bullying is wrong. Absolutely. Make that very, very clear. One of the fallouts from all this discussion, however, is that we're labeling kids. And all of a sudden, 1st and 2nd graders are being labeled bullies, and 1st and 2nd graders are being labeled victims. Why? What are we burdening these kids with all this terminology, okay? Also, where does teasing begin and end, and bullying begin and end? And I asked this question this last summer. I made a round of all the high schools that have peer mediation programs because I wanted to talk to the kids directly. And they had a very good distinction in terms of the difference between teasing and bullying. Teasing is more like between equals, and bullying is when it's absolutely one way. The person who's at the receiving end can't fight back or tease back. And I say some of this because there's a lot of teasing. Kids tend to tease, and we need to be very careful that when it's hurtful, it needs to stop. But we need to be really careful that we don't start labeling kids and forcing them to try to think of themselves in ways that's not real helpful and constructive. So I was asked to put together a class on anti-bullying. So, given my hang up, so I changed it. I've referred to the bullies as gorillas. You know the joke about where does a 50-pound gorilla sit? Anywhere he wants to. Okay, so that's the joke. The kids all look at me as, oh my God, Mr. Chang, you are so old. But they laugh. And then what we talk about, and I will show you these things. What we talk about is, okay, do you have a gorilla in your life? And that immediately takes the onus off all the baggage that comes with bullies and victims. And then we have some really hairy discussions, really. And some of it brings me to tears sometimes because kids tend to be very honest and they'll just blurt out something and it's like, whoa. So what I have the kids do for an activity is to talk about the gorilla that they may have in their life right at the time. And we talk about how to describe it, no names. Describe the behavior. Again, this is disciplining the kids to think, get beyond the name calling. Let's talk about the behaviors. Describe the behavior that the gorilla does that's upsetting to you, and then work out an action plan for dealing with it. Now this is the really cool part. I know you can't read this, and I know this is old school standing here holding a piece of paper rather than projecting it. Yes, I am old, okay? At least it's not on a chart pad, all right? I'm in probate, okay? Here's a menu of ways of dealing with gorillas. And all of the suggestions on this page came from the kids. I realized I had a little gold mine going here, and I started collecting it. So when we do this activity, I share the menu with them. And you should, oh my God, it's just like chicken skin sometimes being in a room full of these kids. Because, again, we have all these expectations. Maybe the kids don't want to be an activist or a leader. Maybe what they need to know in dealing with the gorillas that's bothering them because it's an older brother and maybe there's not a whole lot they can do. Maybe they need to know if they can just find their peaceful place. Like I had one kid say, I just go out and sit under the tree and hug my dog. Okay, that is your way of dealing with your gorilla, and that's awesome. So what you're doing, it's empowering the kids to think about, okay, maybe I can't do something grand, but maybe I can do something small that will help me get through tomorrow. The Seeds of Peace for conflict resolution, help the kids, empower the kids, help them be able to articulate what happened so they can get a handle on the conflict, not the name calling and who's to blame, but they can take responsibility for what happened because they're going to take responsibility for figuring out how to fix it. And to fix it the best that they can, giving them their own limitations. They don't rule the world. Okay, well there's a whole bunch of stuff about, tell them to stop, tell them to get away, stop teasing me. There's a whole bunch of these tell them things. But there's a lot of kids that don't feel comfortable doing that. They don't feel comfortable going up to somebody that's bullying them or teasing them or harassing them necessarily and going up in their face, okay? There was a whole bunch of kids, there's a current that goes, well, maybe we should have more compassion and more understanding for the bullies. And so maybe the gorillas. Maybe we should be saying, why do you do these things? What can we do? Why do you get mad?